I got into a car accident with my good friend. My boyfriend only cared for her. Later, I actually discovered that I had lost my singing skills that I had practiced for over a decade. My best friend suddenly transformed from someone with no singing talent into an amazing singer, captivating her boyfriend beyond measure. When I found out about their closeness, I was heartbroken and even had thoughts of ending my life. I told my boyfriend, but to my surprise, he just said I was being dramatic. But when he finally realized I had left this world, he cried at my grave. After the car accident with my best friend, I woke up to find that I could no longer sing. My boyfriend Daniel held my hand and said, "Emily, it might be because the blood transfusion was delayed that caused the brain injury. Maybe it will get better after some time." After he said that, he gently arranged my blanket. But after 2 months of recovery, staring at the white ceiling above me, I silently opened my mouth, thinking, it still doesn't work. I smiled bitterly, having been called a singing prodigy since childhood and shining in the music industry for over a decade. Could I really lose my chance just like this? But then, something that caused me even more pain happened. At that moment, my leg had not yet recovered, and I struggled to sit up from the bed and slowly moved to the wheelchair. Recently, Daniel has been visiting me less often, and I feel a bit uneasy. After all, we've been together for so many years, I can tell what he's thinking with just a glance. He is still so gentle and affectionate towards me, but I feel that he has changed a bit. I turned the wheelchair and went out for a walk, wanting to relax a little. The hospital is located in the suburbs, and it is now late spring. The hospital is surrounded by trees, and sunlight filters through. I closed my eyes and felt a wave of relaxation. A hint of floral fragrance drifted in the gentle breeze. But suddenly, a voice interrupted my peace. A melody was coming from the small grove. From what I could tell, that girl sang really well. Her technique was quite skilled, and her voice was good, but it seemed to lack some emotion. Although it couldn't compare to my best days, it was still pretty good. I looked over in surprise, not because the singing was beautiful, but because that female voice seemed very familiar to me. It felt like my best friend, Sophia. I quietly found a corner to sneak a look. Sophia was wearing a white dress, covered by a hospital gown. Her complexion was somewhat pale, but she looked particularly charming. Like me, she is still recuperating in the hospital. But beside her, I saw someone who shocked me and even made me a bit flustered. That's right, it was Daniel. He was playing the violin, and the beautiful melody floated from the strings, perfectly complementing Sophia's singing, making it hard to interrupt. Finally, he opened his eyes and praised, "Sophia, I didn't expect you to sing such a captivating song." Sophia playfully leaned on his arm, snuggling in his embrace, as if she were being coy. "How does it compare to the one at your place?" I thought Daniel would retort loudly to her. Unexpectedly, he put down the violin and gently stroked her hair. "How could that voice compare to yours?" Hearing that, I was a bit stunned. Is my voice really that unpleasant? Up ahead, Daniel seemed gentler than when he was with me. He spoke softly to her, almost in a whisper, gently patting her back and saying that my Sophia was simply the most precious gift from heaven to him. Sophia leaned in his arms, her face adorned with a happy smile, which made my heart ache. I momentarily lost focus and accidentally broke a dry branch beside me. "Who?" I heard Daniel quietly asking. Panic surged in my heart, and I quickly turned the wheelchair to leave. I had been in the hospital for several days, and Daniel hadn't come to see me. Everyone in the nearby beds had friends and family visiting, and I felt quite envious. But I texted Daniel and received no reply. When I called, he gave a few perfunctory replies and hurriedly hung up. I could feel his impatience, and the only warmth in my heart disappeared. Facing the biting cold wind, I turned my wheelchair and went to the pond next to the hospital. After being exposed to the cold wind for a long time, my face felt icy. In the nearby corridor, a doctor was loudly asking who had seen Emily in bed 3. I didn't want to answer. Looking up at the dark clouds in the sky, I felt a sense of gloom inside. My parents passed away early, and now I'm living with my aunt. If it weren't for being discovered to have a talent for singing, I probably wouldn't even have finished high school. Sophia is my aunt's neighbor next door. When I was young, I didn't notice that she could sing. However, today her singing truly amazed me. She can definitely sing better than I can. The words Daniel and Sophia exchanged affectionately echoed in my ears. "I'll introduce you to our band. You'll definitely be more popular than Emily." I felt as if something in my heart was slowly collapsing. I took a piece of paper and a pen, leaned against the cold railing, and wrote a little note. Looking at the words on it, my lips twitched slightly, filled with bitterness. I opened my mouth to speak, but not a sound came out. Gazing at the distant sky, I slowly walked to the edge of the pond and mustered the courage to jump in. I can't swim, and as a result, I sank straight down. The water completely submerged my mouth and nose, my lungs began to sting, and my mind grew heavy. I felt as if my soul had taken flight, seeing people slowly gathering around. You can even see your own pale face. Am I going to die? Daniel isn't among those who came. My friend Olivia called Daniel to ask where he was. Daniel's voice sounded a bit hoarse as he said he was at home, asking if there was something wrong. Do you know that Emily is in trouble? Daniel sounded a bit annoyed, and a girl next to him seemed to interrupt, asking Daniel, who is bothering us? He couldn't help but say, what could happen to her? If she's not dead, don't disturb me. After saying that, he hung up the phone directly. Olivia's voice gradually faded in the wind. Could she really be dead? I suddenly wanted to see what Daniel and Sophia looked like together. I saw Daniel bringing Sophia to the orchestra rehearsal place. Everyone saw Daniel walking in with a stranger woman by his side. Everyone looked at each other, their eyes revealing a strange feeling. However, Daniel seemed to not notice any of this. He stood at the front, gently stroking Sophia's head, his eyes full of affection. Then he said, let's introduce our new member, Sophia. She is the new singer of our orchestra. Let's get to know each other. A girl with twin ponytails sitting in the corner was the first to raise her hand. Which part is she responsible for? Daniel paused for a moment and then confidently said that she was the lead singer. Everyone listened and exchanged glances with each other. The girl's name is Isabella, the newcomer I usually take care of the most, and at that moment she bravely stood up to face the band's boss, Daniel. No matter who she is, in my heart, I only acknowledge Sister Emily as the lead singer. Under her lead, some discussions began to emerge within the band. Sophia's expression instantly became somewhat unnatural upon hearing this, but it was just a fleeting moment. I even doubted whether my eyes had a problem since I became a ghost. She then shyly tugged at Daniel's shirt and said, Daniel, even though everyone doesn't know me well, since there are opinions, even if you are the band's boss, I'll just step back. Upon hearing this, Daniel's already somewhat angry expression became even more serious. He comfortingly patted Sophia and said, you know I'm the band's boss, they all have to listen to me. Don't worry, I will support you. Under everyone's gaze, he announced that Emily's voice was damaged, so she could no longer be the lead singer. Does anyone have any different opinions? I've just managed to deal with all these troubles at once. It feels like my soul is floating in the air, although there's no heart in my body. I can still feel a sharp pain. The scenes from the past keep replaying in my mind. Emily, I won't tell anyone about your voice problem. You need to rest well. No one can replace you. Emily, I formed this band for you. Without you as the lead singer, everything else means nothing to me. Daniel's resolute words still linger in my ears. But now, he seems so unfamiliar. I gaze at Daniel in the air, feeling something indescribable inside. I inadvertently followed Daniel and Sophia back to our old home. Daniel brought her inside, skillfully put on an apron, and walked into the kitchen. I felt a bit uncomfortable because Daniel was making garlic shrimp, a dish he used to make only for me. I held back my heartache, forced a smile, and thought to myself, even as a ghost, I still have feelings. Suddenly, I was drawn to Sophia, who was alone on the balcony. She seemed to be whispering some secret. Sophia is pulling at the orchids I planted. This is a rare variety that Daniel spent a lot of money to buy. I couldn't help but grit my teeth, seeing the ground covered with fallen petals. She was quietly complaining over there, her eyes full of jealousy, all because of you. It's all because you were showing off in front of me, which was too much, so I took away your skills and the attention of your lover. I'm clearly very capable, so why are there still people standing on your side? So my skills were taken away by Sophia? If I could see it now, I would definitely be very shocked. How did this happen? After thinking carefully, it should have been during the accident. Sophia and I had just reconnected not long ago. We are childhood friends. Emily, you are truly favored by heaven. She stood backstage during our performance, her eyes revealing envy towards me and Daniel. During that time, the three of us often went out together. Daniel often brought Sophia along on our dates, which caused quite a stir between us. He said that Sophia seemed cold and fragile, but in reality, she was narrow-minded, so he was a bit impatient with her. I didn't expect that after the accident, his attitude towards her changed completely. I still can't understand why. It seems that the accident was caused by Sophia. She not only took away my skills but also tried to steal my lover's heart. At that moment, Daniel came out wearing a pink apron with a bear pattern, pulling out a chair for Sophia to sit down. He looked somewhat surprised at the damaged orchid on the balcony. I suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable and wanted to shout at him, "This is my favorite orchid. How could you let it end up like this?" But he couldn't hear me. Although there was a moment of gloom in his eyes, upon seeing Sophia, his expression turned confused again. Sophia followed his gaze and saw the broken orchid petals on the ground, revealing what seemed like a gentle smile. "I'm sorry. I just thought it was so beautiful that I wanted to pick it and admire it." Hearing this, I wanted to rush over and hit her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I thought Daniel would say something to her, but he just casually nodded, not paying much attention, thinking those flowers and plants weren't a big deal. After all, if Sophia wanted to play, let her play. As long as she doesn't get hurt, that's all that matters. As he spoke, he handed Sophia a tissue and gently wiped her fingertips. Sophia revealed a smug smile behind Daniel's back. I bit my lip, feeling a twinge of pain in my heart. Daniel was gently peeling shrimp for Sophia when suddenly a phone call came in. It was Isabella. "Daniel, I can't get in touch with Sister Emily. Is something wrong with her?" Her voice sounded very anxious on the phone. She had clearly tried many ways to contact me before finally having to reach out to Daniel. In the past, she called Daniel Brother Daniel, but now it had changed to the indifferent boss Daniel, clearly unhappy about Daniel bringing Sophia to the band to replace me. However, Daniel didn't seem to care much and casually fed a shrimp to Sophia. Then, I slowly replied, "How would I know where she is?" I thought she might be coming up with some special plan again, just trying to get my attention. There's no need to pay attention to her. Isabella fell silent for a moment and then hung up the phone herself. Sophia's smile grew brighter, and she even gave Daniel a kiss. I closed my eyes and remembered how different Daniel's attitude towards me was compared to now. I met Daniel in college. He was a genius in the violin department, while I was a famous child star in the vocal department. One spring, with cherry blossoms fluttering, there was a charade bay in the art school, petals falling and willows swaying. I happily sat on a stone boat playing with water. Suddenly, inspiration struck me, and I thought of a song about spring, so I began to hum casually. Just as I finished singing, I suddenly heard a round of applause. "Classmate, your voice is really beautiful. I've never heard such a good voice before. Can I add you on WeChat?" A handsome boy walked over. It was Daniel. At that time, he was just a shy big boy, and I heard his family had high expectations for his artistic pursuits. So, the reason he appreciated and got to know me was because of my singing skills. I drifted helplessly in the air, watching them being intimate, and my curled fingers gradually grew cold. Memories replay in my mind like a movie. The thing I've feared the most over the years has finally happened. Daniel likes me because of my singing skills and abilities. One day, if I can no longer sing, he will naturally leave me. For years, I've been trying to change Daniel's mind. He believes that one can only be loved if they are useful to others. He thinks that only by constantly winning awards and making his parents proud can he earn their love. Over the years, I've treated him well, hoping to help him relax and understand that I love him simply for who he is, not for his violin playing. Now it seems my efforts have had no effect. Like a joke. At this moment, the two people in the living room have happily finished their dinner. The sky has slowly darkened, the night sky is gray and the window glass is like a mirror. I closed my eyes, not wanting to look at Daniel anymore, but still saw two figures intertwined in the window. I wanted to leave, but just then, Daniel's phone suddenly rang with a message from Olivia. At 9 o'clock in the morning 3 days later, Emily's cremation and farewell ceremony. After some thought, I've decided to tell you and see if you want to come. Daniel and Sophia just finished a long kiss, and he had a blush on his face as he wanted to check his phone. Before he could see the contents of the message, Sophia reached out to hook his tie and placed her other hand on his waist. Daniel's eyes were a bit red, and he no longer cared about the content of the text message. I was in the next room, my mind full of thoughts about when he would remember me and how he would react upon seeing the news of my death. Before long, the sounds from next door stopped. Then I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. I looked up with some anticipation, wondering if Daniel had finally remembered me. To my surprise, the person who came in was Sophia, bare-legged and only wearing Daniel's white shirt. Once in the living room, the first thing she did was delete Olivia's message. Then, she walked into the room barefoot with a triumphant smile on her face. A sweet voice rang out, and another spam message came in, which I had already deleted. Daniel merely responded with a soft and then the sound of bubbles from the fish next door came again. I knew exactly what they were doing. I turned around, preparing to leave. I really don't know how Sophia stole my skills and won my lover's favor, but the situation in front of me makes me very sad. At that moment, there was a rapid knock on the door. Daniel frowned as he opened the door, casually putting on a shirt and pants to answer it. Everyone says Sister Emily has passed away. Have you heard? It's Isabella. She actually followed me home. Daniel felt a bit annoyed upon hearing Isabella's words and frowned. That woman would never die so easily. She must have come up with some trick to get my attention. She's always been like this. Daniel slightly curled his lips, his eyes tinged with redness. There was a shine in his eyes just moments ago, but now he looked angry and gloomy. Isabella wanted to say something more when a lazy voice came from behind Daniel. What happened? Sophia walked out wearing Daniel's shirt and a skirt on the bottom. Both of their faces were a bit flushed, and their clothes looked somewhat disheveled. Anyone could tell what had just happened. Sure enough, a hint of anger appeared on Isabella's small face as she said to Daniel, "How could you do this behind Sister Emily's back? She knows about the relationship between Daniel and me." Upon hearing such accusations, Daniel instinctively lowered his head and awkwardly touched the back of his neck. Sophia beside him gently placed her long, fair hand on Daniel's shoulder, her gaze carrying a teasing hint. "Daniel and I are both adults, unmarried. What's the problem? In love, it's the one who is unloved that is considered the third party." Isabella grew increasingly angry. Although she was rather timid, she mustered the courage to take a step forward, raised her slender hand, and suddenly slapped Sophia. "What a rude person. Let me see how she reacts." She ran out of the room like an angry little lion. I couldn't help but laugh. It turns out there are still people on my side. Actually, I just cared for her a bit, bringing her some milk and breakfast. I didn't expect her to go this far for me. In the room, Daniel seemed a bit dazed, staring at the open door, unsure of how to act. Sophia appeared very angry, her eyes blazing with fury, but she quickly adjusted her expression, turned around, took Daniel's hand, and whispered in his ear. The voice seemed to have a kind of magic, leaving Daniel feeling confused. This girl is really too naive. She's clearly influenced by Emily and doesn't take you, the band leader, seriously at all. Daniel's expression changed, showing some anger, but when he saw Sophia, the anger in his eyes instantly disappeared, replaced by tenderness. He thought to himself, "Thankfully Sophia will support me." Previously, Emily always interfered a lot with my band. When he said these words, there was some resentment in his tone, leaving me somewhat speechless. I remember he said the band was established for me, and I only made a few professional suggestions. How did that turn into interference? A glimmer of pride flashed in Sophia's eyes. What role did that girl play in the band? Daniel casually mentioned that the flute performance was quite good and talented, otherwise, he wouldn't tolerate her to this extent. After saying that, Daniel closed the door and wrapped an arm around Sophia's waist as they walked inside. Sophia was smiling happily, but I noticed a sly glimmer on her face behind Daniel. It seems she is also planning to take the same approach with Isabella. Sure enough, Sophia got Isabella's contact information from Daniel. She called Isabella to explain a few things to her. Isabella, being young and impulsive, agreed to meet without much thought. I followed Sophia to the restaurant they agreed on and noticed that as she was organizing her handbag, she deliberately put in a small knife. Seeing that knife, I instantly became alert. The restaurant was in Baroque style, with a bouquet of fresh sunflowers on the table. The sunset poured in through the half-open window, and the warm yellow light made the whole place look relaxed and lazy. Isabella walked in with her hair in a ponytail. Sophia wore a cotton dress, looking both fresh and gentle. When Isabella saw her, a look of dissatisfaction appeared on her face, puffing up her cheeks and pouting. "What else do you have to say, you little mistress?" After sitting down, she began to criticize without mercy. Sophia lowered her head, trying to hide her displeasure, but when she lifted her head, she regained her usual calm demeanor. She smiled bitterly and said, "Daniel and I truly love each other." Then, she pushed a glass of prepared cocktail in front of Isabella. "This is my apology drink for you. If you really hate me that much, I'll try to avoid being around Daniel." After saying that, she lowered her head, like a lost swan. Isabella hesitated. She felt that Sophia couldn't possibly give up on such a great guy like Daniel so easily. Frowning, faced with Sophia's expectant gaze, she slowly reached for the glass of blue and yellow drink. I shouted loudly from the side, telling her not to touch that glass of drink. Earlier, when Isabella hadn't arrived yet, I saw Sophia putting some powder into that drink. Clearly, Sophia was up to something. I don't believe she genuinely wants to explain anything to Isabella. After all, she is narrow-minded and holds grudges easily, and Isabella might be in danger today. But Isabella didn't hear my voice. She paused for a moment, then raised the glass and drank it all in one go. Then she collapsed onto the table. Sophia let out a cold smile and took out a blade from her bag. This was a secluded corner of a restaurant, and the people around were completely unaware of the situation here. I only saw what the surveillance camera couldn't capture. Sophia cut a wound on her fingertip with a blade, and blood flowed out. Then, she cut Isabella's fingertip with the blade. The blood of the two intertwined. Sophia wore a proud expression on her face. How dare she provoke me? I decided to let her experience the feeling of being despised and losing what she loves. I was stunned for a moment before I understood. We are connected by blood, and she took away my abilities and the one I love like this. Looking back, it must have been during the car accident when she did something. No wonder that car accident was so strange. It turned out to be aimed at me. After the accident, I even asked the medical staff to save Sophia first, which delayed my treatment. I always thought my inability to sing was due to complications from the delayed treatment, but it turns out it was actually because Sophia's skill stole my singing ability. My mind was a mess, and for a moment, I didn't know what to think. I saw Isabella lying there last night, slowly waking up in the morning. Oh no, I have to go rehearse. She hurriedly picked up her bag and rushed to the orchestra's rehearsal hall. I heard that the orchestra is participating in a competition soon, and the rehearsals are very intense. However, the thing I was worried about finally happened. Isabella tried playing the flute and suddenly panicked, saying, "Why can't I play the flute?" Everyone was busy tuning their instruments when they heard Isabella and turned to look at her. A girl in a red outfit walked over with concern and asked, "Isabella, what's wrong?" Isabella's face was filled with panic as she said, "I suddenly forgot how to play the flute." The girl in red frowned, feeling that this situation was a bit strange. How could someone who has played the flute for so many years suddenly forget how to play? The people around her were also whispering about it. At that moment, Daniel stepped forward, his face showing no expression, and in a cold tone, he said, "Then you can just watch from the side and take a break." I understood that taking a break meant he needed to find someone to replace her. But in the orchestra, finding a skilled flutist on short notice is not an easy task. Just as Daniel was frowning in thought, Sophia suddenly stood up. She raised her eyebrows and confidently said, I can play the flute." Just when she was about to perform, I wouldn't have to sing. Not just Daniel, everyone's eyes around her were focused on her. Everyone knows how high Isabella's performance level is. How could Sophia easily replace her? However, Sophia appeared calm, walked to Isabella, picked up the flute, and began to play. The tone was soft, and the pronunciation was clear. Although there wasn't much emotion while singing, for a competition, this would be sufficient. Isabella looked at Sophia helplessly. The people nearby started to applaud. After all, Sophia helped them resolve the crisis. I stood by and noticed Sophia quietly watching Isabella in a less crowded area, whispering, "You have to pay the price for your impulsiveness." This time, the orchestra won first place. At the celebration banquet, Daniel spun around with Sophia in his arms, beaming, and said, "You are truly my lucky star. The heavens have given me the best gift." I watched the scene with a tinge of sadness in my heart. He would always say this to me after every competition celebration. People nearby are also discussing how amazing Sophia is. She just arrived and brought such great luck, winning a big prize. She has a lot of work to do. It's really not easy. Although Sophia appears calm and indifferent on the surface, I can clearly sense the pride sparkling in her eyes. Someone whispered that Emily indeed cannot compare to Sophia. I am in the air, knowing they can't see me, but at that moment, I still want to hide in a corner. Their comments pierced me deeply like a sword. These are my teammates who have struggled together for 5 years, yet they so easily stand on Sophia's side. As the girlfriend of the team leader, I have fought for many benefits for them, like extra milk tea in the afternoon, as much vacation time as possible, and occasional gifts. I even try to understand their family matters and help as much as I can. Sophia actually used her methods to easily undermine all my efforts and everyone's affection for me. I clenched my fists in anger, feeling my nails digging into my flesh. At that moment, Daniel thought of me. He called Olivia, but I couldn't reach Emily. Please tell her I want to break up with her. Olivia did not respond. I could feel her rolling her eyes through the screen. Just like many times before, I happily chatted with her about all of Daniel's good deeds. You don't need to separate from her, because she has already passed away. After loudly saying this, she wanted to hang up the phone. She is probably very angry that Daniel didn't come to my farewell ceremony. I will make it up to her. You tell her no need for those little tricks anymore. However, Daniel remains very firm and completely does not believe the news of my passing. Olivia shouted in emotional collapse that she has passed away, and tomorrow is her funeral. Do you really not understand? It doesn't matter whether you come or not. She gave an address and then hung up the phone directly. I can feel the anger in my friend Olivia's heart. She probably hopes I know the true nature of this unreliable man. She might be worried that if I don't understand, I will still think of him after death and won't be at peace. I have already seen through it. Daniel actually appeared at my funeral. Olivia placed a circle of sunflowers by the tombstone according to my preferences in life. She wore a black horseface skirt, paired with my favorite Hanfu jacket, and solemnly hosted the funeral. Daniel arrived at the scene, stunned for a moment, and staggered to my tombstone, seeing my black and white photo. He seemed unable to believe it, rubbed his eyes, and extended a trembling finger wanting to touch the photo. Olivia angrily swatted his hand away, saying, "You murderer, what right do you have to touch me?" Daniel frowned, seemingly trying to recall something. After hearing her words, he took a moment to react. Murderer? Who? Olivia's face was filled with rage as she pointed at him. It's you. As she spoke, she took out a piece of paper that she had tightly held onto since my passing. Some places were already stained with blood. If love has no hope, then what meaning does life have? The doctor handed my belongings to Olivia, who came to help deal with my affairs, which included a diary detailing my feelings. I wrote about the indifference and neglect Daniel showed me during my last days. Olivia looked at Daniel and saw the veins on his forehead throbbing. When she was at her lowest point in life, as such a famous singer, suddenly unable to sing, where were you? When she has no other family in this world and needs your care, where are you? You really don't understand loyalty. Sophia, who is nearby, seems unable to tolerate it. How can she say that about Daniel? It's clearly her who can't sing anymore. Olivia glares at her coldly and says, "Try saying another word." Unaware of Olivia's icy attitude, Sophia continues to boast, thinking she's useless yet still daring to revolve around Daniel. Olivia's anger builds like an impending storm. She strides over to Sophia and slaps her. You have no right to talk about her. You woman who seduces other people's men. I'm a key member of Daniel's band, important to him. Why do you say that about me? After being slapped, Sophia's face is filled with anger, and she can no longer hide her indifference. She grabs Daniel as if seeking his help. At this moment, Daniel looks stunned. Olivia, seeing his expression, is very angry. Daniel, have you forgotten how much Emily loves you? You have no fame, and you've fallen out with your family. She worked hard to find investors, even drinking to the point of gastric bleeding, almost getting assaulted. You have fatty liver, and she accompanied you by skipping dinner, which ended up hurting her stomach too. Your clothes and meals were all prepared by her. When you faced setbacks, she always encouraged you and never complained about your lack of ability. But where were you when she encountered difficulties? Olivia's eyes were filled with anger. Daniel looked unwell, but Sophia still dragged him away. They left my funeral as if they were running away. After returning, Sophia had a quarrel with Daniel and missed 3 days of rehearsals. I saw that Daniel didn't even try to persuade her. He seems to be increasingly dependent on smoking, spending a lot of time smoking while staring blankly at the sky. Sophia noticed he was ignoring her, and her attitude became even more arrogant. I didn't want to see those two, so I aimlessly returned to the place where I lived as a child, wanting to say a final goodbye to this world. I know the reason I don't want to reincarnate is because I feel unwilling in my heart. But what more can I do? I can't crack Sophia's stealing techniques. Perhaps, I can only find some clues in the place where Sophia lived for 20 years. The place where we grew up together is a small town in Jiangnan, with small rivers and stone bridges, houses with white walls and black tiles, and every household plants lush green bamboo and willow trees. I returned to a place I hadn't been for many years and unexpectedly met an old friend, Isabella. She was pretending to be an old friend of Sophia, chatting with Sophia's mother. She said, "Auntie, Sophia misses you very much. She asked me to come see you." After saying that, she put down the milk and tea leaves she was holding. Sophia's mother wiped her hands with her apron, seeming a bit excited. "That child, she still remembers me? It's been years since she last contacted me after she left." She chattered away, seeming to have quite a few complaints about Sophia. "How could Sophia forget you? She told me that the person she is most grateful to is you, for letting her learn to sing and play the flute." Isabella smiled sweetly, focusing intently on Sophia's mother, as if not wanting to miss any expression on her face. "When did I ever send her to learn these things?" Sophia's mom looked a bit surprised, raising her eyebrows slightly as if she was thinking. "Never learned?" Isabella squinted slightly. "She left here several years ago, right? She said she has always missed her hometown." As she spoke, she seemed to unconsciously adjust the brooch on her chest. "I saw a small camera there. She left after graduating from college. It's been 5 years. She studied international trade in college. I wonder what she is doing now. She has made it big, but she never thought of me at all," Sophia's mom mumbled. "Did she ever mention to you what she learned out there? Like singing or playing the flute, for example?" Isabella's eyes sparkled. "Unless they are exceptionally smart, it's impossible to reach her current level in 5 years. It's truly impossible, because she had no artistic talent since childhood, always singing off-key. Moreover, I didn't give her any extra money to learn these things," Sophia's mother complained. "I earn a little money every day playing mahjong. How could I afford for her to indulge in these things?" Isabella showed a thoughtful expression. "Is there really no artistic talent?" I followed Isabella back to City A. She inquired about information along the way, contacted Sophia's friends and teachers, and confirmed that Sophia was tone-deaf in college and hadn't learned to sing or play the flute. How could one understand it all at once? She held her hands together, looked at me, and murmured to herself, "It's truly amazing. How did she manage to do it?" I desperately tried to call out to her in the air, even thinking about giving her a dream, but it was all in vain. Finally, she knocked on my door, and I knew what she wanted. Actually, after my funeral, Daniel seemed to be less obsessed with Sophia. Sophia felt that he was becoming increasingly indifferent to her, as if her influence on him was waning. She tried to wear clothes like mine and do the things we used to do together. She wanted to replace my position and memory in his heart. But now, it seems the effect is not significant. Daniel has started to be a bit perfunctory with her. At this moment, Daniel's WeChat pinged. It was a message from Isabella, wanting to meet him. This time, Daniel didn't tell Sophia, who was preparing breakfast for him, and hurriedly put on his coat and left. Isabella showed Daniel the records of the friends of Sophia she had visited over the past 2 months. The records detailed how Sophia, a year ago, and even in the months after she met me, had no singing ability or talent at all. "You say, how could a person suddenly learn a skill?" Isabella looked at Daniel seriously, and he seemed to be deep in thought. "How about we set a plan to test her abilities?" Isabella suggested. Under the early summer sun 3 days later, the weather was very nice. In these few days, Daniel has become gentler with Sophia, but he always quietly stares at her, his gaze a bit vacant, as if he sees someone else in her. Daniel left the house early in the morning. Sophia was home alone, leisurely lying barefoot on the sofa, looking out the window. Her phalaenopsis orchids had grown lush, with clusters of flowers blooming. A flash of anger crossed her eyes as she couldn't understand why such an annoying thing was still here when you were no longer around. As she spoke, she stood up, ready to tear down that lush growth. At that moment, her phone suddenly buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. "Dear, come quickly to the swing by the river next to the rehearsal room. Her finger barely touched a pedal before she instinctively pulled back, as Daniel's emotions had been quite unstable lately, so she hurried to comply with his request. She wore the cotton dress I often wore and arrived at the riverbank, searching everywhere. The river here is a clear emerald green, and the surroundings are very quiet, with a marble platform extending over the water. The path is lined with my favorite orchids. Among the flowers, there is a swing. That is our favorite date spot, Daniel and I. We especially love to sit there together, watching the night sky, admiring the stars, and enjoying the breathtaking scenery of dawn like an oil painting. All of this, Sophia understood. However, today she was a bit startled. A girl is sitting on the swing, her bangs exactly like mine, with her hair down, wearing a floral romper that I like. The summer breeze gently blows, making the dress flutter in the wind. Suddenly, she starts singing a song that sounds very much like my voice. How could this be possible? Sophia sees the girl turn her head and realizes it's Isabella. Isabella's voice is already quite similar to mine, and now when she sings, it sounds even more alike. Actually, she is playing my recording. According to Sophia, Isabella actually can't sing. Isabella stops singing and slowly walks towards her, her tone carrying a sense of pressure. She says, "So, what do you think? I can sing now too, didn't expect that, right? Brother Daniel has already agreed to let me replace you." Sophia takes a surprised step back, almost breaking her high heels. No way! You learned to sing and play the flute in just a few days, so why can't I make progress? Isabella's face turns pale, feeling like she crawled out from underground, and begins to attack Sophia. Sophia stepped back nervously, her legs feeling a bit unsteady. At that moment, Daniel stepped out, looking at Isabella with eyes full of infatuation. Seeing his gaze, Sophia finally felt dissatisfaction and anger rise within her. Sensing a threat, she realized that Daniel had learned the tricks of scheming and taking the place of a lover. Upon hearing this, Isabella understood what she was talking about. Yes, what you can do, I can do too. The rooftop echoed with her maniacal laughter. Did you steal the skills from my sister Emily and me, and then take her place as the special person in Daniel's heart? Sophia smirked. You know this method, so you should be able to figure it out. Isabella held back her anger and asked, "So it was you who confused Daniel?" At this moment, Daniel looked at Sophia with fiery eyes. She smiled, realizing that this method of manipulating people's hearts wasn't as effective as imagined. Then, she turned to look at Daniel. "It's you, who looks down on Emily because she sings poorly. And it's you, who has a bit of a crush on me because I sing well. Actually, you have your prejudices, you were just used by me." Daniel glared at her in anger, while Sophia wore a nonchalant, provocative expression. Daniel looked at her, mouth moving in agony, holding his head and crying softly. He was thinking to himself, "What have I done?" He gripped his hair tightly and said angrily, "It's all because of you that Emily is like this." He was like an angry beast, desperately pulling at his hair. Sophia glanced at him with a mocking tone, saying, "No, Emily is like this because of you. Your love for her has shifted to me, that's why she lost the motivation to live." Daniel retorted angrily, "Then why are you hurting her? She treats you really well." Sophia laughed so hard she bent over and said, "Treats me well? Just casually shoving unwanted things at me while showing off. What kind of good is that? She brags every day about how happy she is with you, knowing full well that no one likes me." Sophia huffed in anger. I was stunned, thinking that my genuine concern for her was seen as boasting. At this moment, Daniel seemed to understand a bit, and a hint of clarity appeared in his eyes. He smiled and said, "So that's how it is." Then he weakly waved his hand, indicating that she could leave. At this moment, Sophia became a mark of shame in his heart, constantly reminding him of his indifference. For Sophia, this way of handling things was considered merciful. However, Sophia did not feel grateful. A shadow crossed her eyes, and she hurriedly ran to Daniel's side, saying, "Daniel, I love you, your band can't leave me." After saying that, she tried to grab his hand. I secretly caught a glimpse of a small piece of blade in her hand. This is bad, she's going to steal Daniel's skills. I wanted to say something, but couldn't make a sound. Fortunately, Isabella nearby was very alert and reminded us not to let her cut her skin and draw blood. Daniel quickly withdrew his hand. Sophia couldn't help but laugh at Daniel's reaction. "You're even more scared now than when you lost Emily. How selfish. Don't you understand?" Daniel was still in shock, feeling so angry that he wanted to slap Sophia. But Sophia took a step back. Indeed, only after being hurt did she understand what pain is. I knew you would turn against me one day. After all, you are the kind of person who only values ability. I originally wanted to give you a quick end by absorbing all your skills. But it's okay. I was already prepared. Have you noticed that breakfast seems to taste a bit unusual these days? Actually, I no longer need blood to gain skills. You can slowly experience the pain of losing your abilities. She glanced up at Daniel, a slight smile appearing at the corner of her mouth. After all, Daniel, I love you so much. Naturally, I want to slowly strip away your pride and undermine your confidence. Sophia's cold fingers brushed against Daniel's chin, her voice soft yet laced with a hint of chill. Daniel stared blankly at his hands, finally understanding why he had been struggling more with the violin lately. It turns out that his skills were gradually declining, while Sophia was happily laughing at that moment. Suddenly, her phone rang. Sophia raised her eyebrows and broke into a cheerful smile. She said, "Captain Daniel, I have gained your teacher's approval. He agreed to take me as a student and even invited me to study in the United States to become his disciple. I originally wanted to keep it from you, but you are my introducer, so you would definitely find out." Daniel was utterly astonished. It should be noted that his current achievements are largely due to being a direct disciple of teacher Medina. He wrote a letter of recommendation for Sophia, but the major and school she applied for were filled out by Sophia herself. The strongest program at that school is the violin, and Medina is the top student. It seems that Sophia had already planned this out, wanting to take away her skills. My abilities and Isabella's are slowly diminishing due to the lack of opportunities for further study. So, she needs Daniel's violin skills and the opportunity for further learning. Sophia wore a triumphant smile, waving at Isabella and Daniel, as if wanting them to stay frozen in place forever. A flicker of anger and disappointment flashed in Daniel's eyes. He deeply felt despair and pain. I closed my eyes, and indeed, it was only after I got hurt that I realized the pain. Watching Sophia leave triumphantly, Daniel suddenly moved, grabbing her and throwing her off the marble platform. Daniel actually pushed Sophia down. Isabella let out a scream. She leaned over the wooden railing and saw Sophia reaching out to her, but she couldn't control herself and gradually sank down. She felt very scared and struggled desperately. But Isabella couldn't swim either. She shouted, "Help!" but there wasn't a single person around. Isabella quickly realized the situation, grabbed Daniel's arm, and said, "You need to go. I'll say Sophia accidentally fell down. There are no surveillance cameras here either." She looked at Daniel and thought about the times they occasionally brought gifts for Sophia together. At that time, although Daniel seemed cool, he was still gentle and caring towards her and the team. But at this moment, Daniel was holding his head, his gaze vacant, just mumbling, "This is how she died, that annoying Sophia should pay the price." His words were somewhat incoherent, feeling responsible, but it was really all Sophia's fault. "No, I am also responsible for making my Emily suffer like this." Suddenly, he covered his face with his hands and lowered his head, like a cornered beast. Isabella didn't know what to say. Then Daniel suddenly stood up and ran out. Seeing this, the anger in my heart seemed to diminish significantly. It was also time for me to truly leave this world. Suddenly, someone was paying respects at my grave, so I took a glance. It was Daniel. He was cutting his wrist with a knife. Blood was flowing down continuously, but he seemed to feel no pain at all. "Sorry, Emily, I'm really sorry. I understand what it feels like to cut one's wrist. You must have been in so much pain at that time." "Oh, I remember. I once cut my wrist when I had just lost my ability to sing. The doctor called Daniel, saying I had tendencies of depression, and Daniel just impatiently said it was really being melodramatic." I curled my lip. Looking back at the pain I felt then, I think his concern came way too late. I saw him recalling the pain I had experienced. For example, he almost drowned and also injured his wrist, which made it impossible for him to play the violin. He explained to everyone that it was because he had fallen for someone else and harmed me, resulting in everyone looking at him differently, blaming him, and ostracizing him. For this matter, he even deliberately staged a car accident, which only resulted in 2 broken ribs. In the end, he lay on the ground, his face pale from blood loss. "So this is what it feels like to lose blood, Emily. I'm sorry I wasn't by your side then. I had an accident, and the doctor first saved Sophia, which led to my excessive blood loss and resulting in shock." At that time, Daniel miraculously began to care for Sophia. From that moment on, Sophia's abilities should have already taken effect. Listening to Daniel's constant chatter, I felt my body becoming lighter and lighter. In the end, I heard him say, "Emily, you are the only one who hasn't treated me differently because of my violin skills. How could I ever lose you?" I smiled slightly. None of this mattered anymore. I've already learned that Isabella can play the flute again. To me, it seems there are no more ties in this world. A vortex appeared before me, and without hesitation, I jumped in. Wow, that new dad is anxiously waiting outside the delivery room. The nurse came out holding a small baby. The relatives immediately gathered around. Everyone looked particularly excited. Girls are wonderful. Girls are amazing. Grandma was so happy she couldn't stop smiling. She can learn to sing with her mother, and will surely be both elegant and beautiful in the future. I opened my eyes and found that this was a family filled with love and artistry. Soon, I turned 2 and could already say a lot of things. In the morning, Mom was practicing singing when suddenly a child's clear voice came from beside her, perfectly matching the melody she had just sung. She looked at me in disbelief, then sang a very difficult song. To my surprise, I actually sang along, and my pitch and rhythm were spot on. She was so happy that she hugged me, kissed me, and then shared the good news with everyone. It was truly wonderful. My daughter is a singing prodigy. I blinked, feeling very happy inside, and smiled.